Hello, my name is Mandy Luce. I am a student at Southern Utah University in the Administrative Licensure Program, and this presentation is meant to explore and discuss a topic brief that I completed for Education Law. The topic of that brief is manifestation determination and the IEP process. I think most of us as educators are well aware of the IEP process and what that entails. And as future administrators, we'll be dealing a lot with disciplinary action in our schools, and I feel it's important to understand manifestation determination and the process that entails. So this presentation will be meant to briefly explore the manifestation determination process and how I felt it has applied to me this year in my working setting. Um, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act has been a driving force behind inclusionary settings for students with disabilities, and that sometimes comes with some difficult things like negative behaviors in the classroom. The manifestation determination process ensures that students with disabilities receive their educational services in the least restrictive environment to the maximum extent possible, and that they are not being removed from those instructional settings based on exclusionary disciplinary action like suspension and expulsion. So when disciplining a student with disabilities, school officials must not only comply with their own district and school policy, constitutional due process, and the State Board of Education's rules governing suspension and expulsion, but also with an overlay of restrictions imposed by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Among those restrictions is manifestation determination. I think administrators everywhere kind of balance that least restrictive environment and the overall greater safety and concern of a school as a whole. So manifestation determination serves as the primary team decision-making process to determine the appropriateness of a given student's program at the time of a specific incident that promoted disciplinary procedures, the need to change aspects of that program, and whether the behavior of concern was a manifestation of the child's disability. In basic terms, manifestation determination answers the question, was the behavior a manifestation of the child's disability? If it's determined that the behavior was a manifestation of the child's disability, then the student cannot be suspended or educational services cannot be interrupted. This is not to say that they need to continue being in the classroom if that's not the most appropriate place for them or their least restrictive environment. The team should definitely convene and discuss a more restrictive environment or more intensive behavioral supports for that student. If it's determined that the behavior was not a manifestation of disability, the student can be disciplined according to regular school procedures and policy. Again, I just want to say that manifestation determination is not meant to keep students in the regular classroom when it's not appropriate. Certain behaviors are not appropriate for the regular classroom, and a change in placement may be required for certain students. A manifestation determination is required when a student with a disability is suspended out of school for more than 10 consecutive days, is suspended out of school for more than 10 cumulative days with a pattern, or if the student is removed into an interim alternative educational setting for possession of drugs, weapons, or inflicting serious bodily injury. It's important to note that if a child is placed in a juvenile setting because of these behaviors, and it's determined that the behavior was a manifestation of disability, then the public school system would still be required to provide those educational services within those settings. I think it's important to note that with any other legal process, the procedure and process is just as important as completing the process at all. In other words, you need to follow timelines and the right procedures and do it right, or the school can face litigation. I found it interesting in doing my research that suspension is the most widely used form of disciplinary action in the United States, yet there's no evidence to support that suspension teaches alternative proactive behaviors. In fact, suspension may actually exacerbate those behaviors. I think it's especially true for students with disabilities. Oftentimes, they exhibit certain behaviors to serve an escape function, and by removing them from the school setting, we are serving the function of behavior, and we may actually be increasing the likelihood or intensity of those behaviors in the future. Not to mention we're removing important educational and social services for their students by removing them from the educational settings. I have a unique position this year in the fact that I am a special educator at my school and I'm also the principal. I have kind of a conflicting role. I need to advocate for the best interests of the school as a whole while also advocating for the individual needs of students with disabilities within my school. And I have a student who exhibits some pretty negative and at times violent behaviors within the school, and that's part of the reason I chose this topic, and it's been really beneficial to become familiar with this process and to feel confident that my school and district do follow this process appropriately. And I think it's imperative that all administrators become familiar with this process to avoid litigation or to avoid being discriminatory in their disciplinary action. Overall, and in closing, I think, well, first of all, manifestation determination overall is meant to serve as a protection for students with disabilities to ensure that they receive their educational services in the least restrictive environment. Again, I just want to point back to that bit of information I found earlier, that that suspension is the most widely used form of disciplinary action, yet there's no evidence to support it. I think that the discussion of finding more appropriate routes of school discipline is a topic that should be explored. Everything we do in education today is research-based, so why not our disciplinary action? I think that we want to enforce disciplinary action that's going to decrease the likelihood of behaviors in the future, and it's something worth looking into. Thank you for listening.